Hello, this is Susan Duclos, Stefan Stanford, with All News Pipeline, and today we have Mia Marie Pope on the line. Mia knew Barack Obama during his teen years when she lived in Hawaii. I believe it was 1977, 78, and part of 79. And Mia has revealed in previous interviews that Obama is a pathological liar. She's called him criminally insane. I believe mentioned his dislike of women. Not only did he smoke pot and do cocaine, but he traded sexual favors with male drug dealers for his drug habit. Welcome, Mia. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Susan. I'm happy to be here, and let's share some information about what's really going on with the people. I think we'll be all better off for it when we have the blinders taken off.
That's a good idea.
Mia, thanks so much for joining us. Back in 2008, prior to being in the White House, Barack Obama, a.k.a. Barry Soetoro, promised to run the most open and transparent White House in history. On March 16th, 2015, the White House removed a federal regulation that subjected the office of his administration from the Freedom of Information Act. This happened during Sunshine Week on National Freedom of Information Day. This certainly doesn't seem like something a transparent president would do, and I know that you have some information about his past that would make him seem as anything but a truthful, transparent individual.
Absolutely. I mean, Barry is completely incapable of leveling with you. If you understand a little bit about Barry's psychiatric disorder, which is termed narcissistic personality disorder, the pathological lying is simply a symptom of that psychiatric disorder. So, unfortunately, people in 2008 gave Barry the benefit of the doubt, and we now see that absolutely everything that Barry has said has been a matter of expediency. He'll tell you anything at any time to get where he wants to go, and then, of course, at the end of the day, it's all a lie. And the part about him sealing his records, for the research that I've been able to uncover, has been really a rather practical one. You're talking about a guy who's not very bright, who could not get through school on his own, whereby millions of dollars in bribes had to be relayed in order for him to get in and out of school. So right there it tells you that the guy cannot stand on his own 2 feet intellectually. I mean, after all, the other students didn't require the bribes. So the record's being sealed for him partly is because I think he doesn't want everybody to see flunky Barry. He's not an intellectual. He's an individual who is very slow on the uptake. So, part of that sealing of the records is, of course, because he's, his past is shrouded in complete mystery as far as, where he's been at what time and who inserted him into the office illegally, but also as just a matter of practicality that, if you were to have a look at his school records, I think you'd be, in hysterical laughter, in other words. So I think it's partly practicality and then embarrassment for him sealing those records.
You wanted to cover some other things that you said you had uncovered recently. Feel free and let us know what those are.
One of the things I'd like to just touch upon that I think is very important for your listening audience. Whether or not you're stuck in the left-right paradigm, which, by the way, is completely fake. We don't have a two-party system in this country. The same gangbangsters own and control both sides. But if you are somewhat stuck in that paradigm, you say, well, yes, Barry's a nutbag, and yes, he's lied to us, but he was elected. This is the next part I'd like to talk to you about. He was never elected by the people. Perhaps in 2008, because he bamboozled everybody, but by 2012, he'd already turned off this country and was pretty much despised by the overwhelming majority of Americans by 2012. And the election rigging via Diebold electronic voting machines is how they did it. And, for example, former Nebraska Senator Chuck Hagel, who was the previous Secretary of Defense, he sat on Deutsche Bank Advisory Board in 2009, and in fact, they've been investigated for funneling billions of dollars to Iran's nuclear enrichment program, and Hezbollah also. So in 2006, Hagel, one of a handful of senators that refused to vote for Hezbollah as a terrorist organization, he's shown those types of characteristics all throughout his political life. But what I'm really getting at is, in 1992, Hagel was CEO of Election Systems and Software. And so pretty much what you're talking about is when he ran for Nebraska senator, he was a virtually unknown candidate, okay? I mean, like, came out of nowhere. He had no political life prior to that time. He ran against a highly popular Governor, Ben Nelson, who, by all the polls and exit polls, showed that Nelson was going to win by a landslide. Now, this is something that should resonate with your listening audience. So, like I say, Hagel comes in, and guess what? Oddly enough, Hagel wins by a landslide of 83%. Isn't that amazing? I mean, you've got an unknown candidate, no political life prior to his running, and he takes everything by 83% of the vote, which is an unheard of type statistic. And then, in his second re-election, he wins. That margin was eclipsed by an even wider margin. So we're clearly seeing that these voting machines are fraudulent. They've been proven for people who don't particularly maybe want to take my word for it. Just a few clicks, put in. Election rigging, Diebold electronic voting machines. There's a plethora of information out there. There's also documentaries on Netflix about it and things like that. So then Hagel, having really no expertise in the area, gets appointed to as Secretary of Defense. Now, I don't know about you, but that really smells like a payoff to me. This really, you got a guy who's completely unqualified for the position, and you've got all the polls showing that Barry was going to lose in 2012, and then lo and behold, Barry gets in again. So it smells like a duck. I mean, it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and it smells like fraud big time. So for the people who think that, well, we got stuck with this psychiatric patient, pathological liar criminal, but the people elected him, actually, no, they didn't. So Barry is not only illegitimate as far as qualifications, and he's illegitimate regarding the fact that he was never elected, but he's also illegitimate that the 25th Amendment applies, that he's mentally unfit for duty. So no matter how you slice it or dice it, Barry does not belong there in any way, shape, or form. So we need to get to that place where we're critically thinking about things, because it's almost like the American public is a little bit like an abuse victim. They seem like they're traumatized, where they're having a hard time wrapping their head around the fact that Washington, D.C. is run by criminals. And you can't be empowered to make appropriate decisions and changes as long as you're mentally paralyzed with the concept that things really are as bad as I'm suggesting they are. And Barry is a stone-cold criminal, and there's no two ways about that, and his handlers are criminals, and he's surrounded by like-minded people. So, we're in big trouble. The pirates have hijacked the ship, and there's only one way to deal with that or remedy that, and it is we got to take the pirates down. There's no other. They're not going to willingly give up power, and they're suddenly not going to go straight, and they're suddenly not going to start leveling with you. And all of the damage that Barry has done to this country and will continue to do the longer he's where he is. Now, the latest catastrophe might be, one thing, he's in bed with the Muslim Brotherhood. That's proven. One need only look at the White House logs to prove that. But opening up the borders like he's doing. And, if you're a Latin person, I'm pro-immigration, as in doing it the legal way. But the problem with these poor people is they're all unskilled labor. They have a language barrier. They have a culture barrier. And they're surrounded by legitimate Americans who resent them. And so what's going to wind up happening to these poor people is these predators are going to come out of the woodwork and use, abuse, and exploit these poor people. They're going to be working 15, 18 hours a day doing the most disgusting, dirty slave labor for nothing. They're just going to wind up being somebody's slave. So if you're in the Latin community and you think Barry Soetoro is your friend, he's not your friend. He has no capacity whatsoever to care about you in any way. That's part of the psychiatric disorder. And again, your listening audience, please follow up with this with a few clicks. The MDs in the psychiatric field, PhDs, they all concur. Barry has 5 of the 9 diagnostic characteristics that would qualify him as having this psychiatric disorder. So I'm a biologist, and of course psychiatry is not my field, obviously, but I didn't diagnose him, so you need not take my word for it. The best and the brightest in the field have. So if you are a person of color, if you are a black brother or sister, and you think that, maybe because Barry has a little bit of a tan, he must be all right, he's not all right. He does not care anything about the black community. That's proven over and over and over and over again. He will use the black community to race bait, to do the divide and conquer tactic, where, race relations have never been worse since the 60s, since Barry's been in there, because he's as much of a race baiter as Al Sharpton is. If you are a person of color, Barry's not your friend. All he does is damage, 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 damage wherever he goes. That's just par for evil people. I mean, they always leave devastation in their wake. So I think it's super important for people to understand that. And Barry has been mentally ill since the 70s, since I came across him in 77, 78, and 79. You could tell even back then that Barry had a screw loose. And why I say that is that it was like he had a loop that was playing in his head that was completely displaced from reality. It's like there was a whole other little picture show playing in there that had nothing to do with the actual situation. And he also was, a pathological liar back then. He was the type that would try to just always mooch off of you, can I borrow $5 and I'll pay you back on, and of course nothing would ever get paid back. In other words, he was just a user, a moocher, a liar, a hustler, even for, being a teenager like he was. He had a drug dealer named Gay Ray. The guy's real name was Raymond Boyer, but his street name was Gay Ray. Now, Gay Ray, of course, was gay, so that's how the nickname stuck with him. We all knew of Gay Ray. Gay Ray was a significant drug dealer, as with the type of personality that generally comes with these individuals, these types of criminals. They're ruthless, and they're brutal, they're ruthless. Gay Ray dealt marijuana, he dealt cocaine, he dealt everything you could get your hands on. It's all to make a buck. So Barry was quite close with Gay Ray, and we all knew that because Barry was broke in the 70s. He didn't have liquid cash. And he never worked at Baskin-Robbins, too, by the way. That's a complete lie. But anyway, he didn't have any money, and so he would trade sexual favors with Gay Ray for the cocaine that he got, that he bragged that he had. So Barry, anytime Barry has an opportunity for some braggadocio, he will jump on that opportunity. So You're talking about a guy whose brain was sprung from a very early age. So whatever had happened to him regarding trauma, if that was in fact how he became mentally ill, or perhaps there's a genetic component to it as well. I mean, he might just be an organic sociopath and, might not have been a result of trauma. Who knows? But by that time, 77, 78, and 79, his brain was already sprung. So Barry's been in the psycho saddle for quite some time. So we need to understand what we're dealing with here. You're never going to get leveled with by Barry. So, try to put on your most cynical hat when you're dealing with anything Barry, because every time the guy opens his mouth, it's always going to be a lie. Every single time, 100 times out of 100 times. He's not capable of leveling with you. So, if we can get to that place, and then, some righteous indignation and anger, too, because, look, we're the bosses. Your listening audience, my fellow American citizens, you pay the bills. So, therefore, you're the boss. It's not psycho Barry in the White House. It's not psycho cabal handlers of Barry. No. We're the bosses, and we don't do what criminals in government tell us to do. So maybe the first step is non-compliant. Try to just everything. Do not comply with anything that Barry says. Nothing, never. Do not comply. Maybe that's one of the first steps in the insurrection, perhaps. Because I know it leaves a lot of us feeling quite powerless, because you say to yourself, well, God, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. I have, where am I going to find the time to go be a political activist? Maybe just simple things, some emails to people, waking people up perhaps. Just to give you an example, I'm a private citizen. I've not been in the media industry. And right now my numbers for the various interviews, as a conservative estimate, is in the neighborhood of 5 million. And that's just what's been uploaded to the internet. That's not counting the live broadcasts over the FM radio and stuff. So in other words, you'd be surprised with just some effort how exponentially it grows. And so if my numbers are any indication of how fed up Americans are, I think that's telling, because it seems like people have a very hungry ear to try to make some sense of this nonsense. And I'm like why I'm being interviewed today, on Pipeline. There's a tremendous audience for that, and people are fed up. I mean, this Oscamacare that was thrust upon us, complete lie. We have, people, if you make any kind of money at all, and I mean still like, maybe $20,000, $25,000 a year, which is very low income in most places, to live in the country, your premiums have doubled and tripled. And so this whole affordable care nonsense, it should be called the Non-Affordable Care Act, or I call it Oscamacare, just another scam from Barry. So this was a thing to further burden the economy. It was also a thing as an apparatus to invade your privacy and just basically have more control over the populace. So everywhere we look, we can see devastation in Barry's wake. I mean, people who've been born and raised in this country that have paid taxes all of their adult life are having trouble finding work. And so in Barry's infinite wisdom, it's time to open up the borders so it's even harder for people to find work. Gee, does that sound like a psychopath to you? The guy is obviously so mentally ill, he cannot make a sound decision. So, but if you have any, additional questions for me regarding, some specifics about the past or, some of the additional research that I've done, I'm happy to go there, because I've actually been quite a tenacious researcher on all this stuff.
That's great. Actually, back on February 24th, I wrote a story after your last interview on the Hagman and Hagman report, and I asked is ancient history now repeating itself? back in 54
They're using
AD.
the same old game. I mean, a lot of the things that they're using, the Romans did. You know, the bread and circuses, you know, keeping you occupied with your smartphone and the little, you know, with the programs on TV, and, you know, and then also the divide and conquer. I mean, the Romans did that stuff. So they're using very old games, you know, same game, different name, different time. There's a whole movement that is happening under the scenes, and I'll try to address what I've uncovered. There are many tributaries that feed into the same cesspool, and what I'm getting at is you've got your Marxist communist crowd, and that's Barry's crowd, because all of the people who surround him have that Marxist communist ideology. By the way, how mentally disabled is that? How many times has communism been tried all throughout the world and has failed miserably every time? And these geniuses say, hey, let's do Marxist communist again. You know, how bright is that? But anyway, so you've got the Marxist communist crowd. You've got the globalist gangbangster crowd, and these are all for the undermining of America's strength and sovereignty because they want that one world government ideology. You've even got the area of the CIA that's Jesuit-controlled, that's crooked. So, you know, you've got that angle that's in there in play. So, you know, to try to put your finger on any one entity, like also secret societies are involved. In fact, my dad was heavily involved with the Knights of Columbus and Masons, and I know all too well about that whole scene. So we've got, believe it or not, which would make no rational sense, but there's actually entities that are seeking to destroy America. Now, you know, what you say, oh, that's crazy. Why would you want to burn your own country down? Well, these people are psycho enough that's, you know, they think that this totalitarian, Marxist, communist, one world government scenario is going to be utopia for everybody. You know, and I always go back to, well, if, you know, in society in the past, you see people risking their lives to escape those countries. I mean, look at Cuba. You've got these poor people that are roping spare tires together and trying to float across the ocean to try to escape. Well, if it's so great, why are these people doing this? So obviously what they have in mind is misery for everyone. And if we allow these freaks to prevail, our lives are really going to suck. And our children's lives they'll certainly have no future. So everyone has an invested interest to get rid of these criminals. I mean, your very lives depend on it. Because, like I say, you know, you need only crack a history book to see how miserable it is to live under these regimes. And people will do anything to escape, so obviously it's not very pleasant. So you can look at Hitler's Nazi Germany, you can look at Stalin's Russia, you can look at even today, Cuba. You know, they're talking about how it's got the great medical care. Like I say, why do people try to make rafts and stuff to float across the ocean to try to escape if it's so great to be there? Sure. You know, you don't see Americans putting rafts together and trying to float to Cuba. So we've got to really maintain what's left of our country and clean up. And that's going to have to be done by force. I don't know what that exactly looks like, but I don't know, I don't know if it's, storming the White House. I don't know how exactly that's going to look. We are certainly going to need the non-criminal elements of the military to help us out with this. As much as a coup is probably never always the greatest scenario as far as what you end up with, but right now I'd settle for a coup because we've got to get rid of these criminals and these congressmen in Washington. It's pretty clear that they don't work for us, so they're either being blackmailed or bribed because they clearly don't have our interests at heart. I mean, they passed that Obamacare without even reading the bill. I mean, they're clearly not in the business of serving the people. So I'd have to say that, they're power hungry and, like I said, being bribed. They, some of them probably have videos that floating around out there having sex with farm animals or something. These people are pretty nuts. So We can't depend on things being done in an honest fashion, in a constitutional fashion. I think we're going to wind up having to just take it, and that may mean some type of a revolution. I think we already have the 10% needed in the country that are armed and would be willing to do that. It's just a matter of the spark that sets it off.
Spark of revolution, yeah.
I would think so, because I mean, I get emails from all over the country, I get phone calls from all over the country from people who've heard the different interviews and stuff, and even internationally. And so I've had just as well as you folks, being in the media business, you've got your finger on the pulse of what the temperature is in the country, and I can tell you that people are furious. They really are furious. So something's going to break. Something's going to give. Like I say, without a crystal ball, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but something's getting ready to happen. I think that's why the military is doing training exercises in civilian neighborhoods. Yep. I think they're boning up for this. Certainly we've seen all the bullet purchases and all of that sort of thing. So I think they can see the writing on the wall as much as I'm saying I see the writing on the wall. Something's going to give. And if you're listening to this and if you're a police officer or you're in the military, look, you never, ever, ever do what criminals tell you to do, even if it's in the form of an order. You do not follow illegal orders, and you certainly don't do what Barry Soetoro tells you to do. My God, Barry's an idiot. And so if you do what an idiot says, unfortunately, you get to become an idiot too. So you never, ever, ever, ever comply with anything that Barry Soetoro tells you to do. I mean, that's insanity unto itself. But, I really think that, any efforts that a person can make, like I say, a few emails, some phone calls, flyers, who knows, whatever that person's capacity. But if I'm any example, there's been over 5 million people that have heard my interviews.
Oh yeah,
in one form or another.
We can tell you when we had your story, your article up on the Hagman and Hagman report. The response has been incredible. It truly has. Right. I'd like to get your take with all you're talking about on something's getting ready to happen. And you spoke that while a coup may not always be the answer at this point, you'd even take that. Well, that leads right into what do you think about the purge? All the military commanders he purged. Do you think those were the people that he did not think would follow his idiotic orders?
I absolutely. I think you can take a look at Dr. Jim Garrow, who was a CIA operative for over 40 years, who has spoken at length about these matters. In fact, he was the original whistleblower. It's Dr. Jim Garrow. He's all over the internet like I am, and you can hear those interviews. So essentially, he had an inside relationship with one of the generals, and they were being purged for that reason. And what it was, the question, the litmus test was, would you be willing to fire on American citizens?
Right.
And
we did interview Dr. Garrow at one point. So yes. So you agree with him that so
absolutely. Remember, Barry is not out to help America. He's not here to do anything positive for America. He's trying to destroy America, willfully, knowingly, intentionally. So one knows that with that motivation, whatever Barry's going to do is going to be detrimental to America. So of course, would you fire on American citizens? The people who said no, then they got, they got fired for like stupid things like poker chips and some alleged extramarital affair that may or may not have happened, or just really nonsensical little things. And these were lifelong honorable guys. So like I say, you need not take my word for that. You can take a look at Dr. Jim Garrow. Here's another glaring thing to give you an inside look at Barry Soetoro. Now, do we all remember when Barry gets up there and says that he got bin Laden? If you go to Dr. Steve Pieczenik, he's got a Polish last name. It's Piecz ENIK. It's kind of, but it'll find it for you if you go to he's a MD psychiatrist. He's a huge insider with the intelligence community. There's just a tremendous resume to this guy, and he's got the bona fides. He's come out very clearly and substantiated this. Bin Laden has been dead since 2002. Barry did not get Bin Laden. This is just another Barry lie. So when you play back the tape in your head and you see that idiot standing behind the podium talking about how he got Bin Laden, do you see what kind of liar he is? Bin Laden's been dead since 2002. So
yeah.
This is all stuff that you can just substantiate for yourself. I'm not asking anybody to take. Only thing I'm asking people to take my word for, really, is just my impressions that I had of Barry in the 70s. So one of the things you get with my interview is that you don't have to have faith in me, because everything I'm telling you, you can substantiate at a secondary and third source to follow up to see if what I'm saying makes any sense to you. That's why I think people have liked the interview so much, is because, like I say, if I'm telling you anything that's not true, you can bust me in 5 minutes. And you can't bust me. I'm telling you the truth. So we are in a very bad place, and we've got to do something. Like I say, I know the military has got to help us out with this, and I think there is, all the rank and file of the military, I think, is going to be very supportive. There's going to be a few psychos, in the upper echelons, I'm sure, that would just follow an illegal order, but hopefully there aren't many of them. So maybe if they do something and they try to declare martial law, we'll see the military flip, once it's live, you know what I mean? So in other words, they'll go insane, they'll follow orders, but then at the 11th hour they don't follow the orders. So I'm hoping for something like that.
Sure.
Otherwise, I don't know what we can do. I mean, Barry's just going to keep trying to burn the country down.
Yeah,
The longer he's there, he's just going to continue to do what he does.
We are big supporters of the Oath Keepers here, as well as military and law enforcement who uphold the law. Again, 2,000 years ago, insane Nero took over the Roman Empire and burnt it to the ground. And I feel like we're watching a repeat of that right now. Barry has taken over the reins of this once great nation, and neglecting his duties for another round of golf, has presided over the nearly
pathetic. I mean, you've got this guy. He could try out for the PGA. He's out there so much, and these long, luxurious vacations at taxpayers' expense. Does the American public know that Mr. Michelle, or I don't know if it's a male or a female, it looks pretty male to me, but Michelle can't even get her act together to leave at the same time as Barry. So Air Force One has to go take Barry to the destination and then fly back and go get Michelle, and then go take Michelle to the destination, and that's to the tune of over $225,000 an hour, just for the Air Force One operation. Not to mention the long, the lavish, the vacations, the security, go on and on. So these people have squandered so ridiculously, it would make your head swim. In fact, I think my last figure was something like $88 million in that neighborhood, just on their play dates and stuff. I mean, it's crazy time figure. But then that's how psychopath they are. But then they'll turn around and say, oh, but we don't have enough money for schools in Chicago, and well, hey, just their play date budget alone would take care of the education in Chicago. I mean,
or let's raise the taxes so we can pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, people are struggling so bad as it is now, and so these people. This is what I'm talking about, as Barry being completely displaced from reality. He was like that in the 70s also. So you've got an individual who's absolutely clueless, and like all sociopaths who have a complete inability to have any empathy or take responsibility and accountability for their actions, because remember, they're sociopaths, they don't have a conscience. So you've got people who are absolutely oblivious, like I say, Michelle doesn't even have to pack her own bag. She's got servants for stuff like that, and can't manage to get out of bed, get her act together, to leave at the same time when they do take their long, luxurious, lavish vacations. I mean, you know, come on. You know, I mean, it's infuriating, it's exasperating, but you know, one thing, since I'm a very awake person, this is for your audience, it only hurts for a second to swallow the jagged little pill, and then you come out on the other side as a more empowered, alert, informed person. Because I know it's painful for people to take it on in its full breadth and width. It's like, oh my God, is it really as bad? You know, yes, it is really as bad, but it only hurts for a second. It's not like you're going to, you know, sink into a big depression or something like that. It's very important to swallow that jagged little pill down. Understand that the pirates have taken over the ship, and it's not good. It's not good. And we are facing some really tough decisions coming up here. I think it's going to come pretty darn soon. At least I think the military knows that it is.
Well, you can basically feel everything coming to a head.
I feel it too. Yes, Suzanne, I really do. I feel it too, just on an intuitive level. So, you know, do yourself a favor. This is towards the audience. Do yourself a favor. Swallow that jagged little pill down. It only hurts for a second, and then you come out awake. And because you can't really get empowered unless you're awake. If you have the sugar plum fairies dancing around your head, you're going to go nowhere. You're just going to wind up being a sheeple. You're going to do what they tell you to do. You're the ones that are going to go to the camps, you know, not the awake ones. It's the sheeple that are going to, you know, they're going to, do whatever they can to round different people up. So the whole idea is you just do not comply anything federal. Do not comply. Barry says to do something, tell him to go screw himself. You know, no, do not do anything that Barry wants you to do, because it's always going to be a bad deal for you. It's not going to be a good deal for you. It's going to be a bad deal for you. It's good for the criminals, bad for you. So maybe we can start there and get to a place where, you know, we're a real hip, awake society.
Well, I like that. We will make sure that when we do up the article on this, that do not comply comes through loud and clear.
I think that's our first step. Do not comply.
It is.
Just don't comply, don't comply, don't comply. And that's the first step. Because remember, we're the bosses. We're the gas in the engine. We're the grease that makes the machinery run. Without our cooperation, nothing happens. We are the bosses. And if a person needs to repeat that to themselves as a mantra, do that. Get to a place where you're saying, wait a minute, I'm paying the bills here. That means I'm the boss. Get angry. Get resolved. Because, you know, criminals in Washington, D.C. would love to have you think that they're the authority. There's no authorities in Washington. There's no authority. We're the authority. So maybe we can mentally get to that place, and then, we can start, taking care of business. And then we'll be so much wiser. We won't let this happen again.
Absolutely. It's time that the public servants in Washington, D.C. realize and understand that they are merely that, public servants.
That's right, but they don't act. It's clear, excuse me, it's clear that they do not think that way. They actually get so arrogant that they assume that the decisions they make is, in other words, they know best kind of thing, which is, these people, you're talking about people who make the most dysfunctional decisions in their own lives. So if that's any indication, you've got completely dysfunctional people that are really selfish, really narcissistic, megalomania-type people thinking that they know what's best for you. That's insanity. It's insanity. So, and many of them have been involved in treasonous things. I mean, look at McCain. This guy has committed treason on many levels. I mean, he, you know what the North Vietnamese called him when he got captured? They called him the songbird. he was giving up secrets left and right, and they actually put him up in a hotel for a while because he was giving up so many secrets. He didn't spend all his time in the Hanoi Hilton. You know, I mean, you got people who have really done some crazy stuff. So, I mean, and don't get me wrong, it couldn't have been pleasant to be in a prisoner of war camp. And so to that degree, my heart goes out to anyone who's had those horrifying experiences. But just to give you an idea of what a traitorous individual McCain is and was, like I said, the North Vietnamese called him the songbird. So you've got, you know, people like, and McCain just recently met with the ISIS terrorist group, and you know, Barry's in bed with the Muslim Brotherhood and has the nerve to think that he's going to Islamify America. Now, I'm not a politically correct person, and I'm completely against being politically correct. And if you're a Muslim and you're hearing this, hey, you don't like these apples? Go move to a Muslim country, because we're not changing for you. So, you know, this whole thing about Islamifying America, like I say, get on a plane and go live in a Muslim country if that's the way you want things. There's never going to be a Sharia law here. We're never complying. We're not going to become Muslim. Never. So get that part, you know, and that's been a big apparatus that that Barry has been trying to foment on America. And not because Barry is capable of being any religion. I mean, can you imagine Barry busting out the prayer rug 5 times a day and praying to Allah? Are you kidding? You know, of course not. But he's using Islam as a weapon against America because Islam is not compatible with Western values. It's another divide and conquer thing. So, you know, at every turn you can see Barry, you know, trying to set something on fire and trying to destroy this. And you know, like you mentioned Nero, that was a good point, you know, the same kind of insanity. Or you got Caligula, who married his horse. You know, they were insane. You know, and Barry is no less insane. All the despots in history, if you look at Stalin, Hitler, Pol Pot, Mao, Ho Chi Minh, all those guys all had this similar type of psychiatric disorder. They all did. And the reason that you have to be so Looney Tunes nutbag to be in those positions is because they do so much damage that if a person had a conscience, it would tear them up. So you have to have a psychopath to be in those kinds of horrible positions. And Barry is no less insane than any of his predecessors. Like I say, just crack a history book. It's all right there for you. And you're seeing, you know, Barry trying to do as much damage as he possibly can. And another little footnote is that if Barry were a good guy, which is, you know, I think I just threw up in my mouth to just even say it. He's not a good guy. But if he were a good guy, you would not hear a peep out of me. Because I want you to know that this is not coming from a Republican or a Democratic kind of standpoint. Because I'm not that much of a fool. I know there's no 2 parties in this country. And I know that the gangbangsters own both sides. So this is not a political thing. This is not a racially motivated thing. This isn't even an alternative lifestyle thing. Because I don't particularly care what Barry does with his boyfriends. I know he's gay. And if that was all it was with Barry as being gay, but he was a good guy, you wouldn't hear a peep out of me. So just know that my information is meant and motivated to that we are a more empowered society, a more empowered public. Not because I've never made a nickel off of any of these interviews. I've never written a book. You know, I'm not in the business. So, you know, you can take what I'm saying is coming from the heart, that I cannot stand to see these bad guys win. I care so deeply about my country that I just cannot sit back and tolerate watching my country get flushed down the toilet by a bunch of useless, nasty criminals, and Barry being one. So I just, you know, want you to know my motivation for why I'm doing these interviews.
You made it, I mean, it was pretty clear when you said don't take my word for it, just look everything up, that, you know, you're just trying to, how to say, wake people up.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not trying to give people real long homework projects. I mean, in maybe 20 minutes, half an hour tops, you can substantiate what I'm saying.
Right.
You know, I'm not, you know, nobody has to, you know, do this for a long time. You know, it's a quick and easy bunch of searches that you can do to see that, what I'm telling you, everything from Chuck Hagel, to the diaboled electronic voting machines to Barry's psychiatric disorder. You can, there's one doctor who explains it beautifully about Barry's mental illness, Dr. Sam Vaknin. It's Vaknin. He is a world famous psychologist on the area of narcissistic personality disorders. He's actually I think the foremost leading expert on that. But you're going to see MDs, psychiatrists, even Dr. Steve Pachenik, whom was a psychiatrist but did psyops and all that stuff for the military. Even he will substantiate that Barry is a sociopath. But one of the finer things that you'll see about Dr. Steve Pachenik, he's an excellent one to look up because he blows the whistle on a whole lot of stuff. So, like I say, Bin Laden being one of them. So that whole thing in Abbottabad, Pakistan, was a scam. Now, what I think was that, Bin Laden, when he was alive, he had the Marfan syndrome, right? So that's essentially kidney failure. So he would have required dialysis. And you could tell that there was no dialysis equipment in that house in Pakistan. And if Bin Laden supposedly being one of the most wanted people on earth, he's not leaving that compound 2 or 3 days a week to go get dialysis, right? So right there you can see that it was all bull. But what I think is if there was, in fact, a SEAL team that was sent there, it was a body double. In other words, it was a dude that looked like Bin Laden. The guys went in thinking it was Bin Laden. But in actuality, Bin Laden's been on ice. He's been dead since 2002. And a lot of evidence substantiates that. So that sheds light on the fact that 9/11 was all the inside job. Bin Laden was a CIA asset. You can go on. It gets very interesting. If you actually want to follow the rabbit trail, you're going to be fascinated with the information that you turn up. It will literally open your eyes to a whole different world. I suggest that, it's actually very empowering to do this kind of research.
Well, our readers love doing that kind of thing. They'll listen to what you have to say, and they'll start getting that search engine out. So you have given them
right. And
a ton
not
to
a huge
think about.
Project. Literally, the information's at a few clicks, and I encourage that because, look, you can't get through life being a sucker. You really can't. And what's happening is the mainstream media keeps trying to hypnotize people and make them suckers, and you can't lead an effective life being a sucker. So, that's my motivation. It just infuriates me that people are being played for fools like they are. So I encourage you, don't be a sucker. Don't get hustled. Don't get bamboozled. They're lying to you. And all the evidence substantiates that. So, we can do this thing. We can take back our country. I mean, unless they do an EMP on us or some giant false flag, self-inflicted thing like a 9/11, only bigger. But essentially, if the elements of the military can prevent that from happening and keep Barry on a very short leash until we can get rid of him, we can take care of business, I think. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but I'm confident that we will.
We want to thank you so much for what I consider you providing a service to Americans, to our country, by sharing all of this information with us.
Yeah. Hey, and I'm just one. Nobody wins the race alone. But it's like my part. Like so many of us, like you folks, you're doing your part. We have men and women in uniform. They're doing their part. This is my little civic duty. This is my part. We all pitch in and do our own little contribution. So I just happened to be in a unique place at a unique time in the 70s and ran across that idiot Barry Soetoro and have a little testimony regarding it. And, I'm happy to contribute that as my patriotic duty.
Well, we appreciate it greatly, and I guarantee you our readers will appreciate it greatly, too.
Great. It's my pleasure.
I understand that you will be on Coast to Coast sometime soon?
Yeah, well, it's actually going to be Midnight to Caravan with John B. Wells on the 31st. At least that's when it's going to be recorded.
Okay, on Midnight.
Tonight
okay.
I'll be on the Angela Black Show 7 p.m. Pacific time. That's going to be, I'm not sure how, it's usually a day or two before those things get uploaded.
Sure.
So Angela Black show tonight at 7, John B. Wells on the 31st. Let me think, do I have any others here? So far, that's what's booked for March. So we'll see how as these things exponentially grow. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of different things, and depending on the host and where they want to go, these interviews do vary. So you can get different interviews kind of shed light on different subject matter. So it really all depends on how the host wants to lead the program, and if it helps and it helps to wake you up. Hey, how about just the fact that I'm a little nobody from nowhere, not in the business at all, and, I'm clobbering them with these numbers. So, maybe that can encourage you to think that maybe you can do something too, and it'll wind up making a difference.
Well, that's the whole point of what we do, get the information out there, and each and every person we wake up, that's one more person that is discovering the truth.
That's right, and that person wakes people up, and, hey, you guys do a tremendous job.